Transformation, that is a word that you hear everywhere. Every business is doing transformation. Every business is doing AI. If companies and organizations aren't looking at AI, they're missing a trick, because it is going to happen to us whether we like it or not. Same way technology happens to organizations, whether we liked it or not.
AI is clearly changing this whole talk about risk management, but as you say, there's so much opportunity from it.
Don't rely on everything that AI or Google or any search engine gives you. Dive in a little bit more under the skin before making assertions on whatever it is you're looking for.
You've talked about security being a driver of innovation and not a blocker. Where do organisations get things wrong in the relationship between security and technology innovation?
Our goals as any organisation, this is where I put my kind of business leader hat on rather than my technology and infosec hat on, is how does the business continue to do its job? How does it continue to service its customers? How does it continue to protect its investors? So, you think of a cyber incident, the first thing that should come to mind for any organisation is how do they continue to provide the service to its customers?
So welcome to Momentum, a Business Leaders Accelerate podcast, where we are talking to the people pushing industries forward, not just reacting to change, but actually leading it. And today's guest sits really at the crossroads of innovation, information security and AI strategy. Goher Mohammad is Group Head of Information Security for L&Q, the UK's largest housing company. And it's a role that is about far more than protecting systems. It's about enabling smarter, faster and more resilient businesses. So Goher is an advocate for using security as a springboard for transformation and not a blocker. With experience embedding security into business strategy and championing a technology-first approach, Goher is helping organisations turn visibility and resilience into a competitive advantage. We'll be talking about how AI is changing the game for risk management, why security and innovation aren't opposites, and how understanding your technology is the key to future success. So welcome to the show, Goher.
Hi, thanks Claire. Thank you for the introduction and lovely to meet you.
So you are leading security and AI strategy at a time when both are moving so fast, most businesses can't really keep up. So when you think about your role, how would you define it beyond the sort of typical CISO description?
Yeah, so it's a fantastic question, Claire, and you're absolutely right. Both are moving at an exponential pace at the moment. It's just hard to keep up with what is new, what's not new, what's no longer relevant anymore. And it's really, really important for me in my role to be an enabler for the organization. So ultimately, I'm employed by the organization to help them deliver their objectives, their goals, and service the customers. And if I'm getting in the way, that's going to stop them from doing their job and doing the great stuff that we aim to do, which is look after residents and our customers. So yeah, for me, it's just how do I enable, how do I work and collaborate and partner with the organization. I have a background in technology as it is anyway, so I get the other side of the fence, which is people and the business asking questions saying, I need to get this thing done. How, can you help me get it done? So having that experience and then looking at security, I have to work that way, because otherwise I know I'm going to upset people in the process, which is never a great thing to do.
It's so different, isn't it, from saying, the old days, well, I keep the company secure. And now it's like I enable, I collaborate. That's how you get stuff done. It's such a change, isn't it? And was it always what you saw yourself doing? I mean, I guess back when we were all younger, who knew about being a CISO? But this kind of field, is it where you started off?
I mean, I've always been interested in technology. I'm actually a historian and an art by heart, actually. So I actually done a lot of history, English literature, a lot of analytical kind of stuff. And I used to really enjoy that, but always loved tech, as, grew up in that age where, you had Commodore 64 and these kind of computers evolving into what they are now. So I was on that and used to love playing with that. And I kind of veered away from it. And then during university, I had an opportunity to change discipline. So I started doing history and media and cultural studies. And then that changed into into IT and media, which kind of just worked well. And I ended up in a media company doing IT, ironically, at one point in my career. But yeah, found technology fascinating. The history side has become really useful. Working in security, I didn't realize that would be the case. And yeah, I kind of I turned. I was asked to be an IT manager for a small agency really early in my career. I was 25 at the time. I remember being asked, "Can you look after all our IT stuff and help us with budgets and all that kind of stuff?" And I was like, "Okay, I'll give it a go." I mean, it was really daunting at the time, but it was probably the best decision I could make because it just enabled me to grow and get into exposure and things that I wouldn't have done. And part of that was looking after security in a very basic form at the time, but we went on a journey and kind of it was always there, which has kind of led me to where I am now.
So interesting you say, I mean, I did English and history, and if you'd said anything about going into tech, I would have just gone no. I kind of regret that now in the sense that it's the way the world has moved. But at the time, it was like, yeah, I'd run away from it. So I regret that. Okay, so obviously, I regret running away from it because everything now is AI, digital transformation, regulation. You've also got in your industry the housing pressures, this kind of perfect storm. Where you sit right now, what are the big trends that businesses should be paying closest attention to?
I mean, there's so much, like we've said. I think that the trends are, transformation. That is a word that you hear everywhere. Every business is doing transformation. Every business is doing AI. And there's different ways of doing AI. So there's different kind of terminology people are using around AI, for
Mm.
example. So some of it's AI first, some of it's AI agnostic, and it's looking at the different ways of approaching. And I think if companies and organizations aren't looking at AI, they're missing a trick because it is going to happen to us whether we like it or not. Same way technology happens to organizations, whether we liked it or not. And transformation and AI are kind of going hand in hand because a lot of the transformation and evolution of companies and organizations is going to have some form of AI, whether it's them incorporating it or it's happening to them through the supply chain they work with or the other technology companies that partner with them to provide their services. And I think
Or
it's
their competitors. And so if they're not doing it, forget about it.
well, exactly. Or it's just it's that kind of age-old challenge of trying to do more with less, which is what we've asked to. Fortunately for where I am currently, they don't ask us to do more with less. They just ask us to be more efficient, which is great because that's the right approach. It's not let's see where we can reduce the number of staff. It's about how do we make sure we get the best out of the teams that we've already got enabled. And AI is a fantastic proponent to help us do that. It actually is an accelerator if done correctly. And I think but also the challenge that comes with that is we're working more with other organizations. And the more we work with other organizations, actually, the more we put ourselves at risk to a degree because we are handing over, our crown jewels, our really important assets, and giving that responsibility to other organisations. And we don't know if they're going to treat it with the same due care and attention that we do. And I think that's the biggest and ongoing challenge, and also exciting thing that's happening because actually lots of other organisations are giving us fantastic opportunities to do work even better than we have.
Yeah, and you're not having to have all the specialty in house that you used to have, where businesses just operated as these little separate entities. But as you say, with the good comes risk. So if you want to bring all that in and you want to be innovative and you've talked about security being a driver of innovation and not a blocker, where do organizations get things wrong in the relationship between security and technology innovation?
I think again, really good question, and I often find that a lot of it's around partnerships and collaboration and communication. There's always a communication breakdown, or there is a situation where someone in an organization has had a bad experience with a member of a certain department or area. Security is one of those, unfortunately. So, like we said, security can be seen as a blocker. Historically, some organizations have had just security people who have just kind of said, no, you can't do that. We're just going to say no to it. And it's never a good ending to that relationship. Either they end up leaving, or there's friction, or there's frustration, and no one wins. And it's really important that and I've lost my train of thought. So we'll try that again.
No, so it was like, where do organizations get the relationship wrong between
Hmm.
security and technology innovation?
Yeah, so I think it's one, it's the security personnel just not really understanding the business. They just see it very technical, and being a techie myself at heart, I see that a lot, and I used to do that earlier in my career. We would just talk tech to people. Oh, you need to do X, and talking technical jargon, and you see people, their eyes glaze
Yeah.
over, and they're like, well, great, but what does that, ultimately they're looking at what does this mean for me as an organization, or me doing finance or HR or whatever it is. So I think that element is critical. So I see my role and technology people's role to be translators, especially when you're in leadership, to speak to the business in language that makes sense to them. And we have to understand the business. Also, the organization or the business needs to try and let their guards down a little bit and be more open to having a conversation around areas that they're not familiar with, because it's
Yeah.
kind of scary. We always try to run away, or we tend to put barriers up when we're afraid of something or we don't quite understand something. And I think it's that openness. So let's have a conversation. And I try and do that all the time with our business leaders. It's, bringing it a bit more real, making it a bit more real, and showing what it actually means to them, not just from a business perspective, but in their personal day to day and what that can mean. So I think that's I'm kind of giving a solution to the question, but I think that's also where it breaks down.
Oh,
Lack
yeah.
of real understanding.
Yeah, and I always look back on my career and I moved in weird and different, wonderful ways into things. And the one thing I really wish I'd understood earlier on was you need to know what everybody else is kind of doing, or you need to understand the full business. Most of us just go, I've got to do my bit and do that well. Um, and then it makes you less able to understand and be empathetic to other parts of the business that are working differently. You just don't get it, and you just think they're really annoying in that department, or that never happens, because you just don't understand how it all plays together. And obviously in senior roles you hopefully do, but I think the more people get that, the easier it's going to work throughout any business. And then when
Hmm.
you've had this extraordinary rapid period of change that we've lived through in the last 20 years, you are on it all the time. You go, oh, I get how that works with that. And rather than just you're looking at your own little kind of area of influence, you can
Hmm.
actually be much wider in it.
Yeah.
That's my career advice for anybody who wants it. Any young people listening. So obviously AI is clearly changing this whole talk about risk management, but as you say, there's so much opportunity from it. When you are thinking, well, I've got to secure an AI driven environment, what are the key points you have to start thinking about?
Again, not an easy question because there's a lot of people trying to answer that
Sorry.
very question as we speak, but it's fine. I can do my best to kind of give my own views on that. And I think it's securing AI is, I think AIs are really, if we simplify, and again, this is the conversation, it's trying to simplify the concepts, because AI is seen as this scary Terminator type situation, Matrix, whatever you want to call it, name the cliched movie, and that's kind of what people see AI is. But actually, AI is just another form of technology. It's another application that helps us do things. And the typical challenges with any application, including AI, are the using of the data and where it goes and how it's made available. How do you keep it private? How do we, so the CIA triad, for lack of a better term, is kind of boring old concept, but it still applies. So confidentiality, integrity, and availability, making sure that we've got a balance between those. And the reality is when we give the model of data has changed. The way we share data is now free models, which is not free, because what we're doing it in exchange for something. So we give our data to Google, or we give our data to Facebook, or wherever it is. Now they provide us a free service. They are multi-billion pound organizations. They're not multi-billion pounds because they're generous and they give us things for free. They use that data elsewhere. So it's the same thing with AI. OpenAI. They have their models are free, which means they're learning from that, and we're exposing that data to them. Now, I can't speculate if they're doing the right or wrong thing with that, but I think as as people, we should understand that that data could be used in whichever way they see fit. And if we're not comfortable with sharing that data because it's private, we have an obligation to try and get that safe. So the point is, AI is no different to any other application in terms of sharing our data, but we need the way we secure it is by actually understanding what that AI or that application or the combination of both is doing with the data that we're giving it. And I think that's the bit that I think we've moved away from. We used to be quite private historically. I'm a lot older than I probably maybe let on or than I maybe feel. But we used to be quite private, where we would only allow certain people into our private space. Maybe in the 80s and 70s and so forth. But now, as we, in modern age, we allow a lot more external things into our homes through the form of social media and things like that. So it's
Yeah, and it's really true. And I think it's that if something's free, I always remember then, back in the days when people could get free Wi-Fi and things like that if you signed up in a certain place, and we all just sign it, we don't even read it. And I remember someone saying to me that they did this great trial when they offered people free Wi-Fi in a place they wouldn't normally get it. They just had to tick a few boxes, and no one had read the boxes, which had said, "Give us your firstborn child," and all those kind of things. It was a kind of joke, but the idea was we will tell people anything if we're going to get stuff for free.
yeah.
And it's like why you're on the books of so many kind of companies that email you all the time, because at some point you said, yeah, I want that, so I get 10% off or something. And
Yeah.
I think it's the same within business. It can be really quick and easy to think this is a quick hit.
Yeah.
This is a quick freebie. This is a quick way to do better at work. And with individuals and businesses just going, yeah, I can get this done quicker, without thinking what they've allowed into the business by doing so.
Yeah, and that's exactly the point. We have this conversation all the time. Someone's got a great idea and they've got this tool and it's free, and we don't, because historically it was, as an organization, it was like, oh, we don't have the money, we can't pay for it. Oh, this is free now, we can do it. And it's there's a lot more to it than just the security elements. A lot of it is, does it actually work with what we already have? Because we have really complex technology environments now. We're no longer that, like I think you alluded to earlier, Claire. Where you have certain things that you do in house in your organization. You've got your own little IT team that's got its own little enterprise that does work. We're now got lots of different things that tie into lots of other things, and if we don't get that right, we'll end up with something that works really well, but when it breaks, we don't know how to fix it. That's the other thing that can happen. Or it will disappear because someone's decided to pull the plug on that
Well, it
solution.
sort of leads to my next question was for you, is like, you've talked about real visibility over your technology is what works. And this is the case with that. You have to have the resilience to know how to fix it. That's going to be the key to future success. So I was going to say, what does that actually mean in practice? But you kind of explained it there. What should they be aiming for if they want to get that right?
Yeah, I think we talk about security a lot, and we talk a lot about business continuity, but actually for organizations, it's really the word that you hear more and more, and it should be used more and more, is resilience. So as an organization, how resilient are you to the external factors? I mean, we've gone through some very interesting times, especially recently. I'm not going to get political, but you look at all the kind of the wars that have transpired, and the tensions in the Middle East and all of that stuff, and then you start tying in tariffs,
Yeah,
which is a very current topic at the moment. These are all
keyword.
have, yeah, exactly, and they're impacting the way businesses are working, the way organizations are working,
And who
and
knew that was going to happen? I mean, we sort of did, but you just didn't really believe it. No one really prepared for it.
yeah, exactly. We just didn't know, right? But it came out, and we've got to deal with it. So, as an organization, that's going to have an impact. But actually, our goals as any organization, this is where I put my kind of business leader hat on rather than my technology and infosec hat on, is how does the business continue to do its job? How does it continue to service its customers? How does it continue to protect its investors and so forth? So, you think of a cyber incident, the first thing that should come to mind for any organization is, how do they continue to provide the service to its customers? So for us, where I'm currently, we're a housing association. We have to provide care for our residents by being able to provide caretaking services, maintenance, work, collect their rent and so forth. That's what we have to do regardless of whether technology is available or not, whether we're in a cyber situation or not. That's what we still need to do. So it's a collective conversation to get there. And how do we reduce that? So the other term we use quite a lot is reducing the blast radius. So when you have an incident, how do we reduce the blast radius so it only impacts a small amount? And you can do that through investing in the right technology or the right people, or even going to pen and paper if technology is not there. So again, it's about the resilience of the business and not just about making sure technology is available, because that, in certain, hopefully not, but in certain circumstances, technology just may not be there for you to use.
Yeah, and we all know the impact when something goes down. And for a big commercial organization, if their software goes down or an airline software goes down or something, and you're trying to book tickets, you'll go somewhere else immediately. And
Mm.
the impact could be dramatic from just loss of a few hours of being able to talk to your customers. So
Mm.
yeah, it is absolutely key to know what's going to break and why it's going to break, and then you're completely ready to fix it if it happens.
Mm.
One of the other things you do, so you're kind of part of a sector-wide collaboration through, I think you set it up, didn't you? Your Information Security Forum, is that right?
It's, yeah, we call it the CIF, which we try not to call it the SIF because it's like the detergent.
There's the cleaning stuff, yeah.
Yeah, but it stands for the Collective Intelligence Forum that we've set up sector wide. So I co-chair that with, and I co-set it up with another one of the housing associations, just to
I
try and
mean,
bring that.
obviously, it's you'll know why, but why for you is collaboration across all these organisations quite so important?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing it more and more in other industries that typically weren't doing this, and it's just because we have a common adversary, for lack of a better term. I don't like using the word adversary because it always feels like we're going to war or something, something really sinister. But the reality is we have a common challenge, which is, dealing with um, organized crime, and that's the reality of it. You've got your what they call script kiddies, and your hacktivists that are just trying to make a point, or trying to get fame or whatever it is, and then you've got organized crime that are set up in jurisdiction out of where they can operate, and they are as large as a lot of organizations. They have a HR department, they've got recruiters, and they pay salaries, and they have office spaces and all of this kind of stuff, just with the primary job to send phishing links and social engineer and whatever it is to get into organizations so they can, you know, either get a ransom or extort them for money, or disclose it on the dark web to, create reputational damage and all of that kind of stuff. And it's just impossible to stay on top of every single thing. And also, the funny thing is we all have common suppliers. We all have common people. So we see sometimes a supplier that's been compromised or hacked, and they start sending emails. Chances are, if they send it to one organization in that group, they're likely to send it to other organizations in the same group. So we tend to try and say, look, by the way, this is what's happened. You might want to keep an eye out for it, because that could be the difference between ending up in a bad situation or being able to carry on BAU.
It's very a kind of supportive way as well as sharing that, there's dodgy geezers doing this in this particular field today and so on. I mean, it's like, yeah, in any organization or anything you do, you'd all be sharing that information yourself with other people you knew. So it kind of makes sense, or it feels much more collaborative than maybe the way it was before. I mean, maybe not in your industry, but in others where there's a lot of competition. Like, why would you help your competition survive a cyber attack? But
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, it is competition, but ultimately, I think the competition, no one, yeah, I don't know, maybe if you're, a fantastic sprinter, you don't want to see your nearest rival fall over and then you win. You'd want to kind of beat them fair and square. And I think
yeah.
it's almost that's the spirit of it, which is, look, we're not as competitive in our market as others, but you don't want to see another organization go down because they got hacked, because that could be you next, and you definitely don't want to be there. So I think and I think it just creates a much better community, and actually props everyone up, to get to the right place, especially where, let's be honest, we're all helping the economy ultimately.
Well, let's switch now to more good news. So, obviously, doing what you do, you've worked across different organizations and probably across many transformations and come across many challenges. You'll have lots, but maybe you could share an example where actually putting the security in made a real difference to the business outcomes.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. I think that, I mean, I've been with my organization for 6 years now, and that started off from a journey of very little maturity to a place where we kind of get constantly knocks on the door asking for our help, which is great, which is exactly what we want to do. Whereas before it was like, oh, we want to stay away from security because they're probably going to turn around and tell us not to do something, right? And a lot of the successes just come down to creating a culture where people see the benefit and they get something from that. So I'm a big advocate of psychology in a lot of what we do and people's behavior. So actually, you put the barriers up high, people are going to run away. They're going to try and get around the barriers. Whereas if you kind of make the barriers a little bit lower, people are more willing to have a conversation. So one of the things um, I did that sort of brought that kind of benefit to the organization was we were looking to protect our mobile devices a bit more because we didn't have the visibility on them as much, and that would come at a cost. However, we were spending a heap of money on data because we kept on going over our data usage. So what we were able to do is increase the security and our visibility while at the same time reducing the data usage through the platform. Which meant that rather than us spending, I think it wasn't a huge amount, but it was instead of spending £200,000 extra per year, we actually bought in a new product and saved 100,000 per year. If that makes sense.
Wow.
Able to reduce that also through visibility and number of devices and all that kind of stuff. So actually, what we could see was some people never took their mobile device that we provided out of their drawer. They've used it once or twice a year. So we were able to approach them and say, do you really need a mobile phone or a mobile device? So you can make, I think security done right can help make better decisions that actually helps the organization and not just, what do you call it, be a money pit, which is
Yeah.
what's often seen as where money goes in as a just in case.
Yeah, it's a captive function that nobody's got any time for. It's not the last thing you want. With that, I mean, do you feel there's a lot of you have to do a lot of sharing of the wins as the security team to kind of justify your existence, like let people know, or does it just not justify your existence, but to make them see you as collaborators and enablers, or is that just become really obvious throughout the business?
I think it's a bit of both. I think there's that kind of showing those wins, whether it's through KPIs or the right metrics or whatever it is, that makes sense. Not just here's some numbers, here's how many incidents we deal with, you know, we're great. I think it's about, showing that value. So for one of our exec team, they received an email on their personal address from a customer, and they were like, "How did this person get my personal email address?" And we used it as an opportunity to go away, and we said, with your permission, we're going to do a search for your information outside and advise them of what that is. So they said, yep, go ahead, go for it. And we were able to present that back in the form of a pack, and it was eye-opening for them.
Mm,
They were like, wow, is that what's out there? And we're like, yeah, this is what's out there. And
terrifying.
however, these are the things you can do to protect yourself or to make that exposure less. Um, and it's now one of the things they always talk about, why security is important, and it's relating again, it's what's in it for me. So what,
Yeah.
how do I benefit? That's human psychology, and actually it's just, if you can give that tangible benefit back to whether it's employees or leadership or whoever it is, they listen to it a lot more. So we do cyber awareness weeks where we give stuff out and we gamify it. We do gamification for our senior leadership for phishing campaigns and see which area did well. Now, phishing campaigns, you can argue whether they're great or not, but the point is it creates a healthy competition where they don't want to be in the bottom or they want to be at the top. And again, it just creates the right conversations and they're more likely to talk to you if they bump into you.
Oh, gamifying things work so well just to get the message, and also it breaks down a few barriers, like it stops things being so work and kind of deep. You kind of can have a bit of a laugh while you're learning. I think it's really successful.
Yeah,
What you mentioned there, the what's in it for me, the with him, I call it. If that once people get that, it just they go along with you, don't they? They sort of you get the buy-in once they realize that. So you've mentioned smart security investments are going to save organizations money. Some of the things that you were talking about there, especially around the things like device management and protection. Is there anything else that really, you know, maybe small quick wins people could be doing?
I mean, the device management's a good example. There's a lot of things people can be doing, but I think it's ensuring that organizations have some form of capability, and I think that's the bit that is overlooked because the reality is if you work for a larger organization, you have the option to invest because of the turnover and the revenue of the organization and the people resource capacity that you can bring on. If you're a company of 20 people, you can't hire a dedicated security person. That's just not possible. If you're a larger organization, you can and build that capability out. And I think it's ensuring that you have a capability where you've got someone a or even if it's externally outsourced, a capability that can look after your cybersecurity, that can advise the organization on what to do and where to go. And that's tricky with all the different organizations out there, but knowing you could go to someone. So if you've got, even if it's for a smaller organization of say 100 people, you may have an IT manager or a head of IT. That can be the security person. That person needs to be enabled, or you can have someone that supports them in some capacity. And I think that's really, really important because the intricacies of all the little things to worry about is just not possible to stay on top of it. Like any part of any organization, you look at all the ins and outs of HR. It's not a simple, we just
Yeah.
hire people and let go of people and manage them joining. There's a load of other stuff that happens behind the scenes. And it's the same for information security.
Yeah, and I think sort of again, as you say, that if with smaller companies, that is a huge investment. It can feel like a huge investment, but without it, there's just such a risk that you're taking on, and you can now outsource it, even though that feels like another thing you're outsourcing.
Yeah, or have an advisory board, or just somewhere where you can turn to and get the right expertise and the advice. And I think that's the important thing. Without that, um, you know, you kind of can go into situations a little bit blind, and that's the concern. And I think visibility and having visibility of what your future looks like and what are the potential obstacles. Cybersecurity and information security are those technological obstacles that you may be facing or you may face in the near future. I think those are critical. So having capabilities to do that is really, really powerful.
Now, it felt in the old days that you could say to somebody, you could subscribe to a few publications and go, I keep on top of everything by reading these things. Now it is just so fast. How do you sort of try and drown out the noise and just go, I'm just going to look here or here? Where do you kind of go for your keep me up on what's going on and what my next risk is?
I think I think you've got to use all your sources to the best you can, and I think it's depends. So there's your internal sources of information that can help you. So again, there's lots of tools out there, technology tools, not necessarily just infosec tools that tell you stuff. And I think it's making sure that we're looking at them and trying to read them. If we just let them do their thing, okay, nothing's bad until it flags bad, we're missing a trick. We should look at what those things mean. So if we're seeing more and more people logging in over the next 12 months, is that something we need to be concerned about? Do we need to make a strategic decision, or do we leave it as it is? So I think that's, looking at those indicators in your organization are really critical, and looking at external factors. So, we saw M&S get hacked, literally, and I feel bad for the whole organization and the people that are dealing with it because it's never a nice thing, regardless of the circumstance. But understanding what happened to them and then looking at introspectively in your own organization and saying, is that something that can happen to us? Do we need to worry about it? It's really important. Going back to the collective intelligence forum, if you have another organization, one that's gone through that, supporting them, but also understanding and learning from their lessons
Yeah.
and saying, do we need to, I think those become your core, and then looking at all the different sources. There's so many good resources out there, podcasts and YouTube. We're in an era of this, so much data, so much misinformation as well. Don't get me
That's
wrong.
what I
And
mean. It can be overwhelming. Do you have to sort of go, I'm just, because I sort of feel like I've had to cut off some sources because it's just too much sometimes. And you're like, because I see that and I think, okay, well, now I've got to go and check that somewhere else to check it as actually true information. It's like almost so much. So sometimes just go to one trusted place. and go, I know I'm going to get the full story here. It's
Yeah,
almost, and that's difficult to do these days.
and knowing which ones to trust, right? So this is where my historian hat comes on, and I look at different sources and I try and put
Mm,
together the puzzle. My critical thinking hat comes on, and it's because of that background. I didn't just happen to be good at it or just know about it. It's that interesting thing. But you're right, it's critiquing it, saying this is just noise. This is, you know, fake news, for lack of a better term. That which I don't like the term. Misinformation is a better term, but or there's this video that says this thing, but it looks like it's been generated by some generic AI. So you've probably heard the voice that every video on like YouTube, they use this what sounds like a male voice, but it's the same voice that they use to explain something, and it's
yeah.
like, well, no, this is not someone really talking. This is just some stuff that could have been generated by anyone randomly.
I think it's, yeah, and it was so much easier, I guess, when we didn't have these enormous extra sources of information everywhere, because then you just feel like how much is truth and how much isn't. Okay, so I was just thinking you might have been able to give one tip to people and say, look, I kind of find this is the generally most reliable resource around this. But if you're like, that's no, there really isn't one. You've got to keep using your critical head and dissect everything and critique it a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, there isn't one thing, but there is a site that is quite useful called Snopes. I think it's called
Yes.
Snopes, and that's a good source where, I mean, again, that's subject to misinformation, but it's pretty good at trying to debunk a lot of myths and misinformation that's out there. Um, so yeah, and the other tip is don't rely on everything that AI or Google or any search engine gives you. Dive in a little bit more under the skin um, before making assertions on whatever it is you're looking for.
Yeah, that goes across not just on InfoSec, but on everything that's going on in the world today. Just go a little bit deeper and don't necessarily assume that the first thing you see is the correct answer.
Indeed.
Oh, thank you. Well, we'll move kind of a bit more now into a bit of a fun um, area. So, just a few quick fire questions for you. Just say the first thing that comes to your mind, because that will be the truth. What is your favorite city for a weekend break?
Oh, I would say Venice because I went there when it wasn't smelly. Apparently, it gets smelly during the summer, but I went there when it was not, and it was beautiful. Just
Yeah,
one of
never
my
go in the height of the summer. Never go
yeah.
in the height of the summer. But a beautiful place. And a book or a podcast that has really influenced the way you think recently.
A good go-to. There's two podcasts that I find are really helpful. So and they break it down. So there's the AI Fix, which is really, really good. And that's an AI focused podcast. And the same presenter also has something that he does around security, which is called Smashing Security. Again, very easy to pick up, quite humorous, but also a more serious conversation. So yeah, those two I would highly
Okay.
recommend.
Good
Really.
tips. Good tips. And what, you're techie, but what is your favorite gadget that you couldn't live without, that you would take on a desert island, assuming it had Wi-Fi?
Oh, desert island, it have to be a mobile phone because you can just do everything on a mobile phone. I think my most recent favorite gadget is uh, don't this is a really weird thing to say, the Meta Ray-Ban glasses, which are really, really useful because they're great as a camera when you're riding a bike or doing anything. So while you're walking
Wow.
around, which is really cool. And I bought, just because I'm just a geek like that, I bought a calculator watch from the 80s because I was tired of getting notifications on my watch, my smartwatch, and I was like, I just want something that tells the time and reminds me a little, it's a bit retro. So yeah,
So just like when you can actually leave the house and it is literally just a watch, it's not going to harass you when you go
yeah,
for a walk.
yeah.
Good. Good. Okay, I love the gadget one because sometimes people literally could say it's like a drill piece or something, whatever it is. But for you, it's definitely staying with tech. Thank you very much. And the final question was, if you weren't working in security and tech, I mean, we might be able to guess, but from what some of the things you said, but what would you be doing instead?
Good question. It's something I thought about a lot. I think I'd be a chef because
Oh,
I love to cook. I love food, and I just have this weird thing where I can, if I'm eating something, I can kind of pick apart what the ingredients are. And it's just, I don't know, it's just a weird thing I've just done without thinking about it. So yeah, I'd probably enjoy chef, the creation side of it, the creating something new, or just, and enjoying the work you put into something. So I think that's probably
Yeah,
what.
you certainly see the results quicker, I think, with
Yes,
chefing
yes, exactly.
than implementing security and resilience in an industry or a business. Thank you so much. It was a great conversation. I really enjoyed it. Before we wrap up, though, where is the best place for people to connect with you, follow what you do, or learn more about what you might be working on? If you share that publicly, that is.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I tend to use LinkedIn for the most part. I think I used to use Twitter, which is now X, and X is X. So I tend not to use that for sharing stuff. I haven't tried Blue Sky, but yeah, LinkedIn is the best one to reach out and connect.
Great. Okay. Well, that's it for this episode of Momentum, a Business Leaders Accelerate podcast. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please don't forget to subscribe, to leave a review, or share it with anybody else who's ready to take their leadership and their business to the next level.